there's a wall between police and the rest of the community. And I think in those hard times, when national media and all that negative is on them, I think that can tend to build up that wall stronger. I don't think that's healthy for them, and I don't think that's healthy for us.
Welcome to Acton Line, a product of the Acton Institute for the Study of Religion and Liberty. I'm Eric Kohn, executive producer. When people think of interactions between the police and the public these days, for many, the first thoughts that come to mind are of horrific incidents like the deaths of George Floyd or Brianna Taylor. Here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, where the Acton Institute is headquartered, a police officer is currently awaiting trial in the shooting death of 26-year-old Patrick Lyoya. These incidents and the rifts that they have created between members of the community and members of law enforcement highlight some of the challenges of modern policing. How can we bridge the divide between police, who serve an important and necessary function in our society, and the public, to whom they are ultimately responsible? Locally, here in Grand Rapids, enter ICI Nation, an organization that brings communities together by uniting citizens, law enforcement, and community organizations to foster a healthy environment for community to build trust with their local law enforcement. ICI is led by founder and executive director Jennifer Franson, who in just 2 years has facilitated over 100 connections with law enforcement and community, building new relationships and new trust. This momentum has continued to snowball as her membership has quadrupled in size and now has the FBI coming to her and her organization to ask for help building relationships within their local community. Today, I talk with Jenn Franson about her work, the challenges facing local law enforcement and the communities they serve, and how those obstacles to more meaningful connections between the police and the public can be overcome. You can find additional resources in the show notes for this episode, as well as find previous episodes of Acton Line on our website at acton.org/actonline. And if you like this program, you can help us reach even more listeners by sharing it with a friend and leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. We welcome your comments as well. Acton Line is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Jenn Franson, welcome to Acton Line.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
So tell me about the work that ICI Nation does here in Grand Rapids.
ICI Nation, first I have to clarify, because people go, what does ICI Nation mean? What does that stand for? So I don't have a visual to show you, but the C first stands for Connecting Cops and Community. The first I is small and the second I is big, and they just represent us because we're bigger after we connect. So that is what ICI Nation means, and our tagline is Connecting Cops and Community to Strengthen the City. So I'll share with you quickly what we do is we provide opportunities for community and police to engage. Because a lot of times, when do most of us engage with police? When we get in trouble with the law. And that's a conflict time, not the best time to, build a relationship, so to say. So our organization hosts events at the 4 biggest police departments in Kent County. So at Grand Rapids, Wyoming, Kent County Sheriff's Department, and Kentwood. Once a month, I will host an event, a lunch and learn, or a prayer gathering for our faith community. Now, ICI is not a faith organization, but we have a faith community, so we'll do prayer gatherings at the departments, and then we will do presentations, which is a time when I get to invite the community and they give us an audience of officers, maybe who are in training. So there's a group of them together and they'll give us, a half an hour, 15 minutes to come in and let the community connect with them and tell them what we appreciate or what we're grateful for. Again, it just starts to build a relationship. So I host events at the police departments. All of those are hosted at the department so we can, again, get more comfortable with the world of policing and departments. But then I also coordinate events between nonprofits or churches and police. So I have a church call me and say, hey, Jen, we want to do this for the police. And so then I help connect them with the police and help facilitate it and advertise. The last thing I do is I promote. As you guys say in Poverty Cure, you promote human flourishing. And that is the bottom line of what ICI is all about, because there's so much good in our community and working with the police that all I do is I post it, I put it on social media, I send out an email to our community every week that is filled with all the good things happening here in Grand Rapids.
Where did the idea for ICI Nation come from? I mean, what was the call to create an organization like this? I mean, I imagine there was maybe some moment or some observation of a disconnect between policing and the community that you saw an opportunity to bring people together. Where did this come from?
That is a great question because, yes, there was a disconnect. I have my experience and then I have my personal faith story, and I know your community is somewhat of a faith. So
We'd love to hear both. Okay.
I'll start with I was going through a big transition. And 10 years ago, and I was going through a divorce and had 4 girls and transitioning. But in my faith, I learned God's love like never before. And it changed the way I viewed the world. It changed the way I viewed me, and it changed the way I viewed the world. And in this transitioning time, I really had a heart for police. I don't know how else to really describe it. There was once a police officer who had to sit for hours in her car in front of my house because my neighbor had created this drama, and she just had to sit there for hours. And I went out to her and I said, wow, thank you for what you do. I said, if I wanted to, show my appreciation to a department, how would I do that? And she looked at me dumbfounded. And I'm like, well, if I wanted to say thank you? And she's like, well, I guess you could write a card and like little kids and that gets passed around. She's like, I don't really know. And I thought, wow, so does, why is there not an easier path here to say thank you to our police? So I volunteer at the Res Life Women's Ministry, and they wanted to connect more with their community. So I suggested, hey, why don't we do a thank you to our police? They thought it was a great idea. They said, Jennifer, we'll do the event. You go get the police. I'm like, okay. I don't know any police. So I looked up their emails and invited them by email to come to this event. So the day of, I greet about 13 officers from 5 different departments, and I'm greeting them out in the lobby to help prepare them. And so I tell them, hey, we're going to go into applause and about 200 women and some music, and then we're going to announce the departments you're from. We're going to tell you why we appreciate you. We're going to have kids do a song and dance. We'll pray over you, then have cookies and coffee. And they all looked at me, and one guy said, that's nice, but what do we have to do? And I thought, so I went through the whole thing again, and I'm like, okay, so do you get it? He goes, yeah, but what do we have to do? And I said, what aren't you getting? I said, don't you get invited by the community just to say thank you? And he goes, no. He goes, the community has an agenda, whether it's neighborhood or policies. And he goes, and that's okay. He goes, but we have no framework for this. And I said, then just come in and enjoy. That was 8 years ago. They've done that every year. And in our biggest year, we had about 97 officers there from about 20 different departments. So it definitely showed a need and a resource maybe that people weren't aware of, the church ladies.
In your conversations with police officers, what are their concerns? So, I mean, obviously it's a difficult job. One can scan news headlines over the course of the last 8 years, really, that you were just talking about since this whole thing started. And we see high-profile incidents, what happened with George Floyd in Minnesota, just as one example. So you're trying to bring a connection between the community and police officers together. From the police side, what are their concerns? What are they expressing? What do you hear from them?
Honestly, from the police side, I hear more openness to connect. I think the community just doesn't know it because we're not used to thinking of, oh, I need to connect with our police department. Now, again, like you said, the national headlines and the officer-involved shooting last year right here in Grand Rapids, that's definitely making it more of a priority for people. However, yeah, that's really not been a priority. But police now, as I have grown, and I started the organization just over 2 years ago, and I went to the 4 chiefs of the departments I mentioned. I said, look, this is what I want to do. This is where I'm going. Can we host the events at your department? And they all said yes. They were eager to meet with any community that if I wanted to connect them with an organization or something, they were open and excited for that. So honestly, that is what I would say. They know, in the media, they know it gets ugly. And honestly, I think what I see happen is they pull away, right? I don't know how to say it. Sometimes there's a wall between police and the rest of the community. And I think in those hard times when national media and all that negative is on them, I think that can tend to build up that wall stronger. I don't think that's healthy for them, and I don't think that's healthy for us. And so I even told our chiefs, I don't know if you know this, but Kent County police chiefs have a meeting once a month. And first meeting I went to, I thought, there'll be like 8 chiefs there, whatever. There's like 35. It's the college campus chiefs, it's the Sparta chiefs, it's Michigan State, it's DEA, it's Secret Service, FBI. I had no idea. They all work here to keep me blissfully ignorant of all the dangers or anything looking to threaten me. I had no idea. But they meet once a month to work together and resource each other. And I was able to talk to them in January. And I just got a few minutes, and they know me and they know my organization. But I said, look, I want you to know, as they're preparing for the officer-involved shooting trial, which just got postponed to October, but they were preparing for that. They have to prepare for the worst, and that's their job. But I said, I understand you have to do that. I said, but I want you to know ICI is planning on building all the bridges and connections and relationships we can with you now, sustaining those relationships during, and moving forward with those relationships after. And I think the police are open to that.
What do you hear from members of the community? As I think about this, prior to moving here to Grand Rapids, I lived in Chicago for most of 15 years. And again, going back to that kind of national headlines type dialogue about the police and policing, against the backdrop of sloganeering and movements like defunding the police. I knew people who did a lot of work throughout Chicago in some of the more challenging neighborhoods. And what I always thought was interesting is, again, kind of the disconnect that exists in the media coverage of all of this, that a lot of those communities that would be represented by people claiming to speak for them in the media saying, we don't want the police here. Actually, people in the community, when you would get in there and talk to them, the answer that they would give is not that they want necessarily more policing or less policing, that they want better policing. That, again, Chicago is markedly different in character and in a lot of ways than Grand Rapids. But there was a deficit of trust that existed there between police officers in Chicago who have a particularly hard job. The closure rate for homicide cases in the city of Chicago is sadly very low. And a lot of the reason is that they don't get a lot of help in trying to close those cases. So what do you hear from communities here in Grand Rapids about what they are looking for from the police that is, I guess, different than what they are getting? How are they looking to improve not only the relationship that they would have with their local policing, but also just the general sense of improving the community, making things safer, and building that level of trust?
I think you said it. I like how you highlighted, at the community and building up and building that trust. When we talk about I mean, if we can just solidify it to this group, you're talking about people, community members who are building and who are looking to make a difference in the community. And then you have police. Now you have the defund community, and that's a different story, and I can kind of articulate both. But when you have community members, whether they see eye to eye with police or not, you have community members who are out looking to make a difference and serve the community. Because they're part of that forward movement and they have that bigger goal, if I say, hey, would you like to build a relationship with your police? Would you like to talk to police about this issue? Would you like to have a relationship so when things are going down, you can call them to get the skinny, or whatever? And really, every single one of them has said yes. And even to talk about maybe how they see things differently. And our police have been willing to do that also. Sit down. They're not afraid of people who think differently or might have new ideas. I think overall they know these are new times and policing is changing. Our communities are changing. If I can jump to defunding, the defund group, there are many times police sit down with those groups and talk. For me, this is my opinion, those groups and police or the people who don't think like them might stay at odds because they don't want to move forward. They just want defunding. There's no moving forward. There's no relationship building. They're not looking to build a relationship. They're looking to demand this and cut it and be off. So, you listen to them or maybe give them an opportunity, and then if that's where they stand, not much more will happen. And nobody has to demonize anybody else. We all live in the community, but you can better see who you partner with and partner with to build that trust. Because you brought up media too. A lot of times, and I think we're finding that also before George Floyd and things, we don't know a lot about policing. We don't know what they deal with. And so then we see these national headlines that are negative and we're like, oh, that looks horrible.
Well, the whole point of the organization that most people's interactions with the police are either when they are in trouble for something, you've been pulled over for speeding or something like that, or something bad has happened to you and that's when you need the assistance of the police. Your home has been broken into or something like that has happened. So it makes sense, right, that as the average person, that the only interactions you're going to have with police officers are in negative situations. So it makes sense to seek out those kinds of positive interactions that you can to understand the other side of the coin.
Well, yes, the positive interactions to understand the other side, but also to help us be better or more critical consumers of information. Because if we're going to go off the headlines, and well, headlines are, they're marketing to us. Mm-hmm. They're saying what they think we want to hear and what we'll pay for, whether it's true or not. But with police, if now they're all in national media, now they're here in our city and we're getting all this national attention that's negative, do people trust police? Well, gosh, well, I never really thought about it. Well, there was that one officer that pulled me over or and I guess I trusted them, but then you see all the negative media and you don't have any other experience or knowledge to combat that. And there's so much good, not only in this city, but even in the police department that works with the city. And that moved me also. I thought there is no way they are going to paint a big black spot on Grand Rapids. Not that we don't need to fix things, change things, grow, and do things new ways, but the people on the ground this community is an amazing resource to our police.
You said in there that policing is changing and the communities are changing. How do you see policing changing and how do you see the communities changing?
Policing changing. That, and again, I'm not a police, so I'm just speaking from what I see and what I hear. And even what some of them have said, policing is much more community engagement. And I have a funny story I'll share later on that. But it's much more community-based, not like, for instance, 4 40 years ago in the 80s, maybe how successful a police officer was that day might have been judged by how many tickets or how many misdemeanors or felonies or whatever. That cannot and is not how they judge a successful day today. And it is much, and this is a great thing, it is much more gauged by its relationship with the community, including the community they are arresting. How well they were able to get the homeless mental person they had to remove from the street, get them help, and how this person had to go to jail, but they had to make sure to help get the family correct resources. It's much more holistic and valuing the life of everybody. And police really are part of that, whether people are used to seeing it or not. And just to say one more thing, as far as policing, so I've been in organization just over 2 years. And this summer, the FBI has a community outreach specialist in town. And I met her and I laughed and I thought, community outreach specialist for the FBI? Since when does the FBI care about community specialists? Since when do you care about building bridges? What? But since then, I have met with her boss, who's head over all the West Michigan FBI offices, and he wanted to articulate to me and to ICI that they are very interested in prioritizing community relationships and building them, and he asked ICI to help them. And I thought, these are new times. So I still have to understand that. So
what you were describing there, one of the duties that police officers will have are, somebody who's homeless with mental illness problems and trying to get them off the street, get them help. It just made me think, in your opinion, in general, do you think we're asking too much from police officers? I mean, there is, the kind of things that I talked about earlier, traffic violations and, somebody's home is broken into, somebody's robbed, somebody's mugged, something like that, homicide investigations, some of the obvious things. But when it gets into that kind of, they are police officers. They're not social workers. They are not psychiatrists or physicians of any kind. In dealing with some of those problems, do you think we're asking too much from our police to deal with a whole host of social and economic problems, as well as just things that fall clearly within the category of crime that you would expect police to be dealing with?
I'm thinking of I have lots of different answers to that. And I know Grand Rapids has a social worker that's now full-time, and she's riding along, and they find that that's very helpful. So yes, more help, more staff, I think is definitely needed. But I want to say one chief told me once, she said, Jennifer, and she was explaining there was a holdup, a young, I think a 15 or 16-year-old held up a cell phone store. And so the police knew what apartment he was in. They went to arrest him, and they went into the apartment, and it was a mother of 6 boys that she could not control. And they were hers, and she just started pouring out on the officer. I've been trying to clean up my life, and I'm trying to do this, and while I've struggled with this, and I'm trying, and help me. And she said, and she's telling me that, I asked her, I said, is that common? And she said, it's way more common than you know. And she said, my officers, a lot of times, they aren't prepared to help, but they are that conduit in between, meeting people where they're at to get them help. And at the same time, I just met an officer who was talking about how he plays basketball with a couple of guys on his street, because they know, this one kid keeps getting in trouble, so they know his family life. So, they play basketball with him. And I think there's been a whole lot of social, what's the word I'm looking for? Police have been doing a whole lot of helping these bigger issues, social issues, just because they're there in the moment. Do I think we need to help them and better facilitate them? Yes. I think that not only frees them up to do their job, but encourages them that they're part of a bigger picture and they can see that they're getting the kid help, not just turning them over to a system and not knowing I think that's good for the officers too.
What has been really surprising to you about this work? Not only getting to know police officers and the work that they do, but, members of the community, seeing them connect. Tell us some of those stories. What has really surprised you about all of this?
What has, hands down, been the biggest surprise is how I got to find the right word, how amazing the people are in this city, how beautiful. And that includes police and that includes community. For instance, I'm going to tell you about a community member I just met. It's with the Family Outreach Center, and they have an office on Division, and they serve the mental community and the drug-addicted community, and they've been around, I want to say more than 25 years. So they've been there a long time. And they wanted to meet their police. So I got a meeting with them and Chief Terry, and as I sat and listened to the people who've been working that, one of the ladies has been there more than 25 years. I think they called her Dr. Z. And I could not believe her heart for this community. And even as she shared some of the things they deal with, their persistence. They don't give up. They have a heart to heal and help. And people who want it, they do. They meet them where they're at. And again, she's been around and invested for over 25 years. That's not a small thing. And I thought, who in this community knows her or knows of this group? She's not doing it for the fame. And one of the women had a great testimony of how she had been helped by that group. Now she's giving back. Those kind of people are out there. And there's a pastor I work with who is on the front lines of wanting to bring how does he say it? Forgiveness unto healing. And that's what he names his community events he has, where he invites the police and community. And this Black pastor here in Grand Rapids has spent many years in jail. And yet his testimony and what he's bringing to the community is to bring us closer together through forgiveness and healing. I'm like, what in the world? This is amazing. And the stories don't end. There's Grand Rapids Dream Center that I hosted for a lunch and learn at the Grand Rapids Police Department. So I had Chief Eric and then Greg Mulchan, who's one of the directors of the Dream Center, both share, because I wanted the police to hear what Dream Center was doing right there in their neighborhood. And I wanted the community to hear what Dream Center was doing. So we had, at this Lunch and Learn, I had the principal of a middle school. I had some leaders from Urban League. We had a dean from Grand Valley. We had community leaders. We had a couple churches represented. We had this great eclectic group of community come and hear Chief Eric and his heart for the community and his police department and how he wants to lead. And then all that this Grand Rapids Dream Center is doing to just impact and change lives on the ground. That's, inspiring.
What is one thing that, so you're in the business of connecting members of the community with police officers and police officers with members of the community. So let me ask this question from both sides. So think about community members that haven't been a part of an interaction like this. What is one thing that you wish that they would come to understand about the work that police do to just have a better grasp of not only the challenges of the job that the community would witness, but that the police officers feel in their own work?
I would say sometimes it's a perspective change. That police, when they're interacting with the community, it's not like you interacting with your neighbor. That's not the same thing as police looking to take you to jail or call you out on your behavior that's being harmful. It's different. And many times, again, I don't know how to say, real life violence is ugly, period. And now violence can be verbal, emotional. And I think a lot of times we project what we lived through or what we experienced. And that's okay. We all come at life like that. But remembering, and I guess I could share a story. I've done ride-alongs at different times, and I want to protect the people they deal with. But a lot of times when police are dealing with people, they lie. They might act crazy or do things that a normal person wouldn't do. And sometimes if you're desperate, if you're feeling that desperation, that can make you act weird. And I really have to say I was surprised. And I know we can talk about clergy on patrol, something else I help with, but we have clergy that serve with police, and they say the same thing, that I can't believe how calm and respectful the police handle people as they're going through their maybe their desperation or their guilt or whatever, and they're freaking out, or they're telling you straight up lies that you can know. And they just stay calm and stay baseline and just, yep, okay, and continue to ask questions or help facilitate it in different ways, or yep, we'll get you an ambulance. And whereas I'm watching it thinking, what's going on? Oh no. And they deal with a lot I couldn't foresee until I see it. And then I think they handle it way more respectfully than we think, I heard that there's 29,000 arrests in a day in this nation. And how many arrests do we hear about? Mm-hmm. So I'm like, there's a lot more interaction that we're not hearing about that maybe we can pay attention to. So.
Tell me about the clergy on patrol.
Oh, yes. A couple years ago, Grand Rapids asked me to go down to Kalamazoo to check out their pastors on patrol and find out, more about it, see what I thought. I met with the leaders down there, reported to Grand Rapids, and then I brought the Kalamazoo chief and one of the Kalamazoo pastors and his assistant chief all up and hosted them for a lunch and learn at the Grand Rapids Police Department so that they could meet. And by this time, Grand Rapids decided they had wanted to do it, and we had some pastors. So at Grand Rapids, we have 5 pastors and 2 rabbis who are serving as clergy on patrol now, and they do a ride-along once a month with the Grand Rapids Police, and they have a partner, and their job, of course, is, they can build a relationship with the officer, but their main job is to just help be on the scene, be on the street, help to be that bridge with police, help de-escalate if they can, and let the community see them with police. And we've been at it now just over a year, and I hosted Clergy on Patrol in December for the community. So some of their police officer partners and the rabbis and pastors got to talk, and all of them had glowing reports of each other and the impact it's having on the city. So I think that is another great thing here in Grand Rapids that is just taking off.
What's the biggest thing that you've learned through doing this work? Like, what has made the biggest impact on you? Something, maybe a preconception that you may have had that through doing this work has changed? What has been like your biggest personal takeaway from doing this work over the last couple of years?
Because I got into this as a hobby. So it was a hobby. I was following my heart. I was just doing what I loved, honestly. And things kept growing and doors kept opening. But you find yourself in circles, even today, doing a podcast or in front of the Kent County Police Chiefs. And you're like, who am I? Wait, do I know do they want to hear? Wait. And
how did I get here?
How did I get here? It really is a lot more personal. How you see yourself, more than what I'm doing, but even who I am and who I'm bringing to the table. It confronts a lot of your beliefs about yourself and challenges you on that. So I am definitely learning to keep my eyes. Personally, I'm a big faith girl, and so I keep my eyes on God, and I look for Him to lead me. And sometimes I find myself taking steps I definitely wouldn't on my own, but based on what I think. But the doors open, and I'm just boldly walking through them. And so far, it's been a waterfall. Doors keep opening, even with the FBI.
Talk about that a little bit. I mean, so it's one thing, community police departments. You're talking about Grand Rapids Police Department. You've mentioned some of the other local communities around here. The FBI, certainly an organization that has drawn mixed opinions from people over the course of time, and especially one that has been in the headlines quite negatively lately. What have you learned about them and your interactions with them and the kind of work that they do? What sticks out to you?
I wish I could share more, but I still don't know a whole lot even about what they do. But I will tell you, they are prioritizing community relationships. Again, this is a sign of our times. And even if we were to say, oh, it's just because they're negative headlines, who cares? It's a good priority for them to have, and they're open to making it happen. Now, when I asked them, I said, what is it you want from the community or from ICI? And they're like, well, we want to build relationships. And he said, I want people to feel free if they have questions to ask us. And I said, I don't think people know what you do, so I don't think they'd know questions to ask. And he said, well, about civil rights and he didn't bring up any, headlines or anything like that. And so I should have maybe asked if he meant that. Oh, so do you mean, about the stuff going on now? But I think there is that step. They want to make themselves, again, and when you're building a relationship, there is vulnerability. That takes vulnerability on both sides to start to try to build trust and build that relationship. And that goes community-wide and law enforcement-wide. So I'm excited to see that. And I think it's an open door that we can proceed with and move forward.
Well, let's finish up there with one more question. For people out there in the community who are skeptical of the police, either because they've had negative interactions with them in the past, or they are following the news and they see the headlines. You mentioned the police-involved shooting here in Grand Rapids about a year ago. What is one thing that you would like them to know, to understand, that would help be able to work on some of that skepticism that they have about their local policing?
I would say that if it's a priority to you, we think you have a voice at the table. And whether it's coming to one of my events that I'm hosting and you can talk to our community or the police even there, the only requirement I put on it is you have to be willing to bring yourself to the table and bring your strength to the table with the goal of moving forward, not just yelling. But if you want to respectfully bring up your concerns, and I know a lot of people don't want to make a priority of it. They have their opinions of policing and that's whatever. It doesn't impact them. But then there's people who do. And maybe they do have personal experiences that kind of taint them negatively. I would love to have them come and meet with some officers and just even share, this is what happened to me and this is how I feel about you. And if you're open to letting them dialogue with you, I think that's how a community moves forward. I think police are better for it. I think we are better for it.
Jenn Franson, thanks so much for joining us today on Acton Line.
Thank you very much. I was honored to be here.
As always, thank you for listening. Our team loves putting this podcast together for you. It's encouraging to hear from our listeners. Feedback is incredibly important to us because it lets us know what you'd like to hear more of, including the kinds of topics you're interested in most. If you have comments, feedback, or ideas for a show topic or interesting guest, you can email our team at producer@acton.org. Until next week, for Acton Line, I'm Eric Kohn.